Hi, it's Ben Meyerson from BucsGameDay reporting on the latest with the Mike Evans situation. Want to talk through everything we know so far and what Bucs fans can anticipate regarding what's going to happen in the future with Mike and the Buccaneers. First things first, if you didn't see the news this morning, Mike and his agent put out a statement, which I'm bringing up right now. Want to read a few snippets from that. The gist of it is that Mike Evans and the Buccaneers have not agreed to a new contract, that he's due a new deal, and that he has worked with the GM, the assistant GM, and they feel that while they've put their best foot forward in terms of working with the front office, that right now the ball is in the owner's court. So really, this is Mike Evans and his agent calling out the Glazers and letting Buccaneers fans know that the front office is working with them, but that seems to be the holdup right now is ownership and the Glazers specifically, obviously. But I want to go through a few snippets from this specifically. So there's a portion, and I'll link this in the description of the YouTube video and on Twitter. You can go and search this up. It's from Rick Stroud, who put this statement out, basically saying that when you have a player that will be Hall of Famer and still has 4 to 6 more years to make an impact in the league, you have heaven and earth to keep him on your team, and we would hope ownership feels that same way. Interesting that they go and mention ownership, like I said earlier. Then he goes on to mention that we have been working on extending Mike's career with the Bucs for over a year, and we want fans to know that this is not a tactic and the ball is in the owner's court. That said, we are giving the Bucs until the start of the regular season to make him a Buck for life. And if that cannot happen, 100% of Mike's focus will be on football and his future and where he can make an impact. So a lot to unpack with this whole statement. I think first things first is that, they also mentioned in the beginning they have not received a formal offer from the Buccaneers, which is interesting to note. Really, I think more than anything, that means that they have not submitted a formal offer, because I'm sure discussions have been had, but rather that, the Buccaneers are not going to submit a formal offer that Evans and his agent won't agree to. So, I don't think that has too many implications, but I think where the implications start is when Mike and his team go on to mention ownership specifically, because at the beginning of this statement, or towards the beginning of it, they say, despite our efforts over the past 2 years, the professionalism of Bucs general manager Jason Licht and assistant GM Mike Greenberg, we have not received an offer to stay in Tampa. Again, like I'm mentioning, they have not received a formal offer. So, really interesting that they go ahead, they praise the GM, they praise the front office, and essentially let fans know that, hey, the front office is working to try and make this happen, but it seems like the ball is in the court, like they said earlier, with the ownership. So, yeah, obviously Mike Evans is not exactly one to go out of his way to put out a statement like this. So, I think him and the Buccaneers have to be pretty far apart and feel like a no deal is imminent in order for Mike to have to feel like he has to put out this statement. Specifically that September 9th date, that Saturday before the start of the season. It's interesting that they mentioned that as the cutoff date. In actuality, personally, and from what we know over at BucsGameDay so far, doesn't seem like that is a hard deadline. In some sense, it's a hard deadline, yes, because Mike wants to focus on football once the season starts. But if Mike Evans in week 2, week 3, week 4 goes and says to his agent and the Buccaneers, let's make this deal happen, they're going to make it happen. So, yeah, very interesting. A lot to unpack like that. Like I mentioned, it kind of puts the ball in ownership's court. They want this deal to happen soon. And while him and his agents say that this is not a tactic of any kind, any statement like this is a negotiating tactic. And I don't think it's a bad negotiating tactic or something that fans should feel bad about, because this is how agents and players are communicating. This is how they get information to the fans. So, with all the buzz on Twitter, this statement worked, and pressure's definitely on the Glazers right now. A few things also to break down from the situation. Ian Rapoport in the NFL Network put out a article going over this whole situation. There's specifically a mention that Evans is looking for similar compensation to the Cooper Kupp deal, which is about 2 years old at this point. It's a 3-year, $80.1 million deal, which would make him a top 5 paid receiver, but not quite Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams. It would put him around $26.7 million And the feeling we're getting over at Bucks Game Day is that, the Buccaneers would like to keep that number under 25 million, while Mike and his agent are pretty firm on their number being 25 and above. So that's kind of where that difference is right now. So, really interesting point for the Buccaneers. Mike Evans is 30 right now. Obviously, they don't want to let him go. They want him to be here. They want him to be a Buccaneer. But in the same sense, they have a lot of decisions to make moving forward. And if they go ahead and extend Mike now, well, that certainly complicates things for Devin White, Antoine Winfield, and some of their other free agents that are going to be upcoming this season as well. You're paying a 30-plus-year-old receiver $25+ million. I can understand where that trepidation is, but in the same sense, you can understand where Mike Evans and his team is coming from. So I think both sides, have a fair points on either side of this argument. But that $26 million mark is really what seems important for Mike. Also important to note, he has not requested a trade. He has not formally done anything like that. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. He's been at practice. He's gone out of his way to be there, not hold in. He's, not doing what we see like other teams are dealing with right now, like Chris Jones, Nick Bosa. He's not going through that same situation, or even a hold in like TJ Hawkinson had with the Vikings. So I think that's interesting. But overall, interesting situation. We'll see how it plays out. I expect much more news to come out in the following week, as we're about a week away from that Saturday deadline that Mike and his agent have set. Like I said, though, I still do think that if we go into the season and Mike decides he wants to be a Buccaneer and he wants to make it happen, it's going to happen. So while that's a hard deadline, in some sense, I really don't think it's that hard of a deadline. Another thing to note is that because Mike is a 10th year veteran, he's entering his 10th season now, that if he were to leave in free agency next offseason, most players who are beneath that 10-year mark in terms of veteran players, their teams would get compensatory picks. So, for example, the 49ers are going to get a third-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo signing with the Raiders. Javon Hargrave went to the 49ers. The Eagles will get a third-round comp pick. But because Mike is going to be entering his 10th season, if he leaves, no matter what the amount is, the Bucs would only net a fifth-round pick. So that definitely sets the mark in terms of if there are any trades potentially out there, the Bucs would have to get better than a fifth-round pick to really justify that. So yeah, interesting situation. We're going to see how it all plays out, but seems very realistic that this could be Mike Evans' last year with the Buccaneers. In terms of trades, I don't expect a trade unless things drastically change and the season really goes down for the Buccaneers. But we also know how much Mike Evans loves this community and wants to be here. So we'll see how that all plays out. I think we'll certainly get more leaks over the next week from both Mike and his camp and the Buccaneers. So, we'll see how this game plays out. In reality, my expectation is that Mike does not sign a contract now. He potentially signs one in season or at the end of the season, but we'll just have to see how that all plays out. If you want more information on the Buccaneers, you want to read more about what's going on right now with them, head over to Bucks Game Day, powered by Sports Illustrated. We just added a fantastic writer, JC Allen, who's been covering the Buccaneers from Pewter Report for quite a while. He put out a great article going over some of the things he's expecting from the team this season, some bold predictions. It's a great read. Go and read that, and go follow us over on Twitter and follow myself, and we'll be updating you as we get more information on the Mike Evans situation.